I'm just tired of losing friends to gun violence. I'm 26 and I lost 23. And Corday was one of them. What's so symbolic about him was we actually talked, and my work that I was doing in the community, he was my backbone. He would always tell me, sis, keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate it. It's going to pay off. And when I actually got the call that he was gunned down, it just, my heart broke. He was killed October 17th at 3:30 in front of his house in broad daylight. I still go out to pass out flyers. I remember his birthdays. I remember his anniversaries. I remember the conversation. He was just full of joy and full of life. And he was 24 when he was murdered. He was 24. And I can say that that was one that really struck me. My father passed when I was 10 years old. I moved to the actual south side of Chicago, which was when I experienced violence the most. I grew up going to CPS schools, but my mom transferred me out, and I ended up going to a Catholic school, which is St. Sabina, Father Michael Flager. My mom did the best she could. She worked. She was the sole provider now for me and my brother. So due to her work, I was able to get involved in gang activities and be very disrespectful, curse out teachers, fight, um, basically corrupt my community. But it was something inside of me that made me angry. The reason why people join gangs in Chicago is because of the lack of belonging. I found out when I was 7 years old that my father was diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. And at the age of 7, you are very conscious of what's going on in your household, but you're not able to basically communicate that to anyone. And especially, like, you can't go to school and be like, hey, my father have HIV/AIDS. That's when, DCFS would come in and try to evaluate things, making sure your well-being. But when my father died, I basically snapped. I was 10. I was angry. I had one parent, and that was a bit much for me. A year after my father passed, my grandmother died, who stepped in to help my mom. And then I want to say about 6 months after my grandmother passed, my mom found out she had breast cancer. And I was at the age then 13. So now I'm feeling like the world is against me. And that's when the anger and rage came in. That's when I didn't give a care about anybody. Like, anybody who said anything to me, whether it was hi or bye or whatever, I took it as being offensive because I was angry. And I took it as a trigger for me to fight. I've been suspended so many times due to fight, due to violence. I did school. I sold drugs. I bought firearms. I mean, I was just out there terrible. The first time I bought a gun, when I was in 6th grade, it was $25 from a friend. And hey, when you living in a violent community and you a part of gang activities and you into it with different people, and guns give people a sense of power. It gave me a sense of power. Like, I wish somebody would. That was my whole thought process. Like, I wish you would. I'm going to go in my house, I'm going to get my gun, and I'm going to shoot you. And that's why I became an activist, because I was able to get the help that I needed before I ended up either going to jail or being killed. My turning point was back in 2006 when two young ladies that grew up in my neighborhood, I actually went to school with their siblings. Starkeisha Reed, 14, she was shot on a Friday morning. A bullet came through her window and hit her in the eye, and she died. 2 weeks later, it was Salitha Wright. She was 10, killed at a birthday party on a Saturday. Knowing these two as babies and knowing the lifestyle that I was living, and then I was actually with a child myself, I knew that I wanted to make a difference for my son because I was out there. I experienced violence, my home being shot up. I experienced fighting, like you can't walk to a bus stop. You can't be seen with friends because those friends will become a target. And I just didn't want to live that life anymore. You feel like living that lifestyle, you feel like you are dead on the inside, but you're just alive physically. Like you're always on a constant watch. And sometimes when I did want to find peace within myself, I didn't want to fight, but I was accustomed to fighting. So you had to be on a constant, basically ready to go, like a combat. But I began to, change my life and get involved in the movement. And what made me actually get involved in the gun sense movement was just thinking about how these guns are actually being circulated in our community. Father Michael Flager he's my former priest. I am a Saint Samina graduate, class of 2003. When I came back into his covering of wanting to get involved and him knowing my background, he began to tell me some solutions to violence. And one of the solutions that him and Saint Sabina was working on was the gun sense issue, and that was the 1 gun per month, making sure that people can get 1 gun per month. And I asked him, I said, well, will this stop the violence? Because, I want my friends to stop dying. I want people to stop dying. And he was like, it's a solution to violence, but it's not the solution. There's other things that we need to work on. So I began to do my research myself on gun sense legislation and think about my history, my past, how many guns I was able to get my hands on. The first one that I got my hands on when I was in 6th grade, and I played with them. Like it was people in my neighborhood who had guns, like assault rifles and all type of guns, and we'll just shoot them at whatever. We didn't shoot them at people. Well, I didn't shoot them at people. The second one was a 38 my sophomore year. I paid for that one too. I believe it was $25 again. And then I think my junior year, a friend gave me a 22 handgun when I asked for it because I was going to a high school that was very violent in Chicago. And when you live in a community that's where gangs are separated and you come to one high school, there's no education there's no learning going on. The only learning that's going on is basically you need to learn to run for your life. Learn a plan to get out, because if you get out, they'll basically pull the gun from under a car or somehow get the gun into the school, and they'll be waiting on you outside the school, and you can probably get shot blocks away from the school or maybe sometimes on school property. The thing that he said, his last words before he was shot, what God has for me can't no man stop. So I carry those words with me. What God has for me can't no man stop. And that's what keep me going in honor of him.